Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we talk about spiritual subject matters. Specifically, we're diving into the ancient yogic text of the Bhagavad Gita, and we're learning how to apply these timeless principles into our everyday lives. We are here with our live studio audience and my co-host, Doyal Gurunga. How are you this morning, Doyal? Tuning in from London, Doyal.
I'm in London. I'm across the pond, and I love being here with you. I'm working on a Gita course that I'm building right now, and I'd lost track of time. And I saw a message from Machuta, her internet's down. I was like, "Oh, is it 9 a.m. on the East Coast?" And I thought I'll jump on. So I'm
Yeah.
here.
I'm glad that you're here because when I didn't know if anyone was going to come on, I know in the past you've like held it down by yourself. While Davey was like, "You got this, Kishore," and I was like, "No, I actually
I
don't.
don't got this.
I
No.
don't got this." So I'm really happy that you're here. We are reading from Bhagavad Gita. We're in chapter 2. We
Mm-hmm.
are at verse 28. And we're
Okay.
talking about the nature of the soul and the nature of this material body as well. So
Yeah.
shall we read?
That's what we're here for.
What we're here
That's
for.
why I showed up.
Okay, so this says, verse 28. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated.
Mm,
So, what need is there for lamentation?
mm.
Some look, do you want to stop there?
No, go for it.
Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being.
Mm.
Yes, this is kind of the
Hmm.
end of the like soul discussion. 'Cause then after,
Soliloquy. I call it the soliloquy of the soul.
ooh, I like that. This is the end of the soliloquy of the soul, because then after that we get into like duty and kshatriya and stuff like that.
Duty, and also it's sort of like, okay, what do you do with this? I mean, Krishna goes through a lot of effort to explain the eternal nature of the soul. And then the immediate reaction to that is, okay, well, my soul is eternal, but everything around me is temporary. My body's temporary, my circumstances are temporary, this life is temporary. So and Arjuna's natural response is, great, I'm running away. But Krishna's like, no, you take that with you into your life and allow it to inform the way you go about life in a different way. And so the second part of the Gita, as well as, the rest of the Gita, but specifically chapters 3, 4, and 5, which deal a lot with karma yoga and the idea of enlightened action, that two people may even externally be functioning in the same way, appearing the same way, but their activities are on a different level of consciousness, and that should be recognized because it's not necessarily the way life looks like, but the way that we are experiencing life internally that makes the difference. And so all of this is a setup, it's a prep work for Arjuna, because he's asking Arjuna to fight, he's asking Arjuna to engage, he's asking Arjuna to step into the world, but he's saying, your problem, Arjuna, isn't like, what should I do? Your problem is that you need to understand the inner workings of life so that you can do what you do without being so disturbed by it.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that, and in verse 28, he's mentioning specifically that whether you believe in the soul or not, we know that every life has a shelf life, every body has a shelf life, and that either you're an eternal spirit soul and you will live beyond this body, like we lament or we mourn at a funeral, and the body is right there in the casket, and we recognize that the person's gone, they're not here, the body's here but they're not here.
Mhm.
And the question is, well, where did they go? So he's saying either they're an eternal spirit soul whose destination is beyond this life, and we should not lament for them. We may be sad that they're no longer with us, but for them, we realize that they've moved on and they continue to exist. Or if you don't believe in the soul at all, that we're just a bag of chemicals that came into being at birth and will cease to exist at the end of life. It's such a short span of time. You have what you have in this life and then it's gone. Also not a reason to lament because it's so minuscule in the
Mm,
grand scheme of things. So he's saying, ultimately death is a part of life,
mm,
and every even in this life we're experiencing micro deaths as our body soul transmigrates from childhood, youth, old age, etc. And he's just setting up this idea of taking life seriously from the perspective of the soul,
mm,
but not thinking that this is the all in all.
mm, mm. I love what you just said about taking life seriously.
Mm,
I think that when I mean, like you said, it's like even if we don't believe in this stuff, we have a clear understanding there's a shelf life to animal life, to my life, and etc. But I was reading this purport in a verse 29, which is describing the soul as amazing, right? Uh,
mm,
and in one of the paragraphs here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that it is very difficult to find a person who perfectly understands the position of the super soul, the atomic soul, their respective functions and relationships, and all other major and minor details. And it is
mm,
still more difficult to find a person who has actually derived full benefit from knowledge of the soul and who is able to describe the position of the soul in different aspects. But if somehow or other one is able to understand the subject matter of the soul, then one's life is successful. And I really love that because it really turns a kind of what we view as success in this material world on its head. It's like we
mm.
think being successful is like having a good job and looking great in a swimsuit and having a nice tan and doing what I want, and like being able to buy whatever I want.
You
It's
look
like,
great in a swimsuit and have a nice time.
thank you. I guess I'm successful.
Kishore tans very nicely, by the way.
I do. I do.
I, on the other hand, I take significant work.
You
Takes
take
me
a lot of work,
weeks.
but once you go
Once I
over
get
the hump,
going,
once you get
once I get
going,
over the hump, but then once I get over the hump, I've got to keep it going, otherwise it fades. It's so temporary.
yeah, that's true. Mine is like immediate. Like the second that I arrive, it's like
We're not
um,
we're not born equally. That's for sure.
no. But no, I was saying that it's just really nice how Srila Prabhupada is mentioning. I was just thinking about like, wow, how fortunate are we
Mm,
to be reading, not only to be reading Bhagavad Gita, but to be reading Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, and to be reading it verse by verse and really diving into this in a practical way. Yesterday at Tuesday Night Kirtan, some participant, he was like a friend of one of the ashramites. He had come before and he was talking to me about Bhagavad Gita and etc. And he was telling me how in his school, he's studying like law or something, and they want him to understand the Bhagavad Gita in 1 week and give a report on its views on violence. And he was like, what should I do? I was like, you have a week? And he was like, yeah, I have to present this paper in a week. And I was like, eesh. I was like, and I gave him some pointers here and there.
that's violence.
That's violence. And I was just thinking, like, God, it's like when we treat these sacred texts like that, like an academic pursuit, it's like, okay, just dive into it, get what you need, put a report. It's like we're not
Mm,
really getting to the understanding of the soul that Srila
mm.
Prabhupada is talking about here. We're not really getting to the nitty-gritty. And so I was just thinking how fortunate we are that we get to be here together and talk about, you know, uh, these really important subject matters because it's really important.
Yeah, totally. I think that's also I think that's a good point that you mentioned. That's really helpful because when we're reading the Gita, Krishna talks a lot about the difference between jnana and vijnana, our knowledge and realization.
Mm,
And some of the things that are being mentioned take time to realize for ourselves. And it's an ongoing journey to realize them on a deeper level. Like I can't say that I fully realize
Mm.
the nature of the soul, that I understand fully and completely and realize my incomplete spiritual nature, and I'm just not on the bodily platform. I have so many bodily identifications. Intellectually, I know that I'm a spirit soul. Intellectually, I know that and I'm convinced of that, and it makes sense. And you get glimpses here and there, and the idea of life is not that now that I am fully realized of this, I'm going to now live life totally differently because of it. But it's
Mm.
I want to gain a realization of this, and it's okay if I'm not there yet, because sometimes we get these like it's very clear, strong statements about who we are, how we should live life, etc. And it can feel almost like a caustic, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
like it's coming at us in a strong way. Like, oh my God, like it's a very large paradigm shift. And I think it's okay for us to intellectually accept something and recognize it's going to take time for me to um, like emotionally or wholeheartedly embrace something as a realization. Like it's okay. You're not lesser than or less spiritually advanced than if you take time to really let something sink in. It's not like, oh, I read the Bhagavad Gita. Are you self-realized now? Like I read, Krishna told me that you are, the nature of the soul. Like all the teachings of the Gita in some ways are there in chapter 2.
Hmm.
But Krishna spoke 16 more chapters of the Gita in order for Krishna to get it.
Hmm.
And so I think a little bit of grace and empathy and patience for us as we're reading and taking this in. It's not like, it's like, and everything that we'll learn moving forward, the practical application of it is related to how we can take this realization more deeply.
Yes. Yes. And as you were speaking, I was looking at the last paragraph of this purport, and I feel like it's very in line with what you were saying.
Mm,
It says the easiest process for understanding the subject matter of self, however, is to accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord
mm,
Krishna, without being deviated by other theories. But it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in
mm,
this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality
mm,
of God.
mm,
Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way. And I love this idea, it's like who knows how many lives or how many places we've been, even in this own life that we're in right now, like how many different versions of ourselves have we gone through?
mm,
And I love what what Srila Prabhupada is saying here. It's like, yeah, it's gonna take some work.
mm,
Going to take some work. It's going to take some austerity, some penance, some sacrifice to really understand this, to let this stuff sink in from the intellectual to the emotional. Because usually what happens is that I understand this on an intellectual platform, and then
mm,
when some sort of situation comes up in life that is triggering, and that's an emotional situation, it's emotionally triggering. It's like, okay, do I really believe what I believe? Do I really believe what I've been studying? Can I actually, and those are those like micro moments where it's just like, yes, I have faith in Krishna. Yes, okay. I know that my body, whatever, like this. And that's gonna look different for every person. It's not like
mm,
a one size fits all formula. Like different people are gonna go through different struggles, whether they be mental struggles or emotional struggles or physical struggles. And so it's not like we can just be like, okay, Bhagavad Gita plus this equals self-realization. It's like you have to kind of go through your karma. You kind of have to go through the austerities and the sacrifices that you need to go through in this life for you to reach that place.
yeah. I was reading uh Srila Prabhupada's guru, his teacher was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's guru was Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's guru, was a lifelong ascetic. He was like a very hardcore ascetic that lived a very strict, renounced life. And he was also extremely learned. He was very, very smart. I think it was by the age 9, he memorized all 700 Sanskrit slokas of the Bhagavad Gita.
Mm.
And he was said to be a living, walking encyclopedia. He was just a very smart individual. And his guru, Gorkishore Das Babu, was also a renunciate, but he was illiterate, didn't know how to read.
Mm-hmm.
And Bhaktisiddhanta, although being so learned, surrendered unto him because he felt that he was extraordinarily advanced in devotion. And of his teacher, he mentioned, there's a quote that I found, that he said, "It was by providential dispensation that I was able to fully understand the language and practical side of devotion after I had met the practicing master, Gorkishore Das Babaji. No education could have prepared me for the good fortune of understanding my master's attitude. Before I met him, my impression was that the writings of the devotional school could not be fully realized in a practical life in this world. My study of my master and then the study of the books, along with the explanations of my father, gave me ample facility to advance towards spiritual life. Before I met my master, I had not written anything about real religion. Up to that time, my idea of religion was confined to books and to a strict ethical life. That sort of life was found imperfect unless I came in touch with the practical side of things." And so I pulled from that, for me, that the realization of religious principles, of spirituality, of dharma, comes from the practical application of it in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
So Krishna's giving this beautiful knowledge of the soul, and he's saying, you're not going to realize it by me just telling it to you. You're not going to realize it just by reading about it. You have to go out and live it. And so that's what I got from that.
It's such a wonderful point. It's a really important point, I think, especially kind of in the contemporary age, and we talk about this a lot, in this contemporary age where there's perhaps a feeling or a habit of picking and choosing kind of what works from different traditions, from different spiritualities, like this works for me, this doesn't work for me, this works for me, this doesn't work for me. And I think that in principle, there's nothing wrong with that. Like in principle, that makes sense. Like, yeah, it works for me, so I'm going to do it. But if everything is kind of like, if we're on the surface of everything, how can I really go deep into one thing? Because the reason I'm talking about this is because the emotional strength that it takes to practice, to actually practice what we're learning, these very high ideas, they're very high ideas, the soul, reincarnation, Krishna, they're very high ideas. So the actual emotional strength that it takes to practice that, it requires deep faith, it requires deep relationship, it requires more than just like, yeah, I feel like Krishna on this day, and on this other day I feel like, I don't know, Ganesh, and on this other day I feel like Buddha, and on this other day I feel like X, Y, and Z, right?
Ooh, Jesus, I love you. Ooh, Jesus, I love you. And I love Buddha too. Rama Krishna. Dun, 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 dun. You know
Exactly.
that song?
No, I don't know that song.
It's a real song.
I thought you were just making it up.
No, it's a real song. I'll find it right now. Somebody look. Ooh, Jesus, I love you. And I love Buddha too.
Jesus, I love you, and I
I
love
love you and Buddha too. It's the name of the song by Mason Jennings. Ooh, Jesus, I love you. And I love Buddha too. Rama Krishna Guru Dev. Dada Jing and Mahadev.
There you go. There
Why
you
do some
go.
people say that there is just one way to love? To love you, God, and come to you. We are all a part of you.
See, Lexi also thought you were making it up.
No, it's a real song.
The real song.
I love you and Buddha too.
But but yeah, it just has me wondering, like, Because, like, I feel like as life goes on, as one gets older, like you realize it's like, yeah, I mean, like life is hard. Like this stuff is hard. It's not like a walk in the park in a sense. And we have community, we have each other, we have these wonderful teachings. But I love that you brought it into the practical because it sounds nice. It's like, yeah, I have to practically apply these, but practically applying the lessons is hard. Like it's a hard thing to do, to like show up in a conflict, where we're being triggered all over the place. I mean, like I'm
Mm,
gonna practically apply what I've learned in the Bhagavad Gita. It takes a lot of work and surrender and faith to be able to
mm,
practice, to like do it again and again.
mm,
And I think it takes a lot of this is the last thing I'll say. It takes a lot of like faith is the word, because more often than not, especially at the beginning, we're going to get it wrong. We're not going to be perfect. It's not like my first conflict of trying to apply principles from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm just going to be like this enlightened sage who's just like, yes, I dealt with that perfectly and I am now,
mm.
so it's going to take a few times of falling on my face and getting it wrong and like this. And so having the tolerance and the faith to be like, yeah, I got it wrong. I didn't apply these principles the best I could. Let's do it again,
I get it wrong all the time.
again. Yeah, I get it wrong a lot of the times. Um, but we are running fresh out of time.
We're out of time.
We're out of time. So
Hit it.
Kimberly, what you got for us today? What are our takeaways?
Taken away that we have a shelf life, and
Oof.
yeah.
Coming straight for the jugular.
And it takes time and practice for things to sink in and become realized. We have to live it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. We have to live it. We got a shelf life.
Those are my takeaways. I got a shelf life, so live it.
I think I'm gonna go with those two. I have a shelf life, so live it. If anyone else has any takeaways that you want to put in the chat, please put them in there. Thank you all so much for your beautiful attendance here, day in and day out. Although we missed you. Oh no, wait, I was here yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. We missed you on Monday. Thank you so much, Sydney and Dana, Baldevi, Anna, Rachna, Kimberly, Lex. It's so good to see you again. Rini and Lane and Irenka and Dana and Bruce. Bruce tuned in.
Bruce!
We love you, Bruce. So good to see you here. Thank you all so much. We will be here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we'll see you then, folks. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.